I am recording. Would you like to
You
say
are
stars of stage and screen, or would you like to say the other bit?
the other bit, please. Please.
Stars of stage and screen.
Illustrated by Ken Reed, Mountain Master.
Stars of stage and screen.
Long established sailor superstition.
Stars of stage and screen.
Sister Jinx.
Stars of stage and screen.
Cameo in 2019's
Stars of stage and screen.
Plug's uncle.
Stars of stage and screen.
Jonah sink ship.
Jonah sink ship, that's not his actual second name, we don't know. But hello, welcome to Space Station USB 3:7. No relation, no relation.
No relation. That's the furious edge of the trouble belt. I am 261-262.
And I am 156-1414, but you can call me 15. We are holographic 2-pack rings, ABBAs of bases.
Scanning radio waves of ether.
We went to Earth.
Number 9.
And grabbed these comics of Scottish comic the Beano.
What is a Jeffries? The Earthling calls us. What is a Jonah? The Earthling calls us spoilers.
Tonight, Stars of Stage and Screen, number 6.
There's another corner of the universe unlocked.
You are welcome. ...
Dash ..
So today we're talking about Jonah, who was a comic strip character published in the magazine The Beano, 1958, illustrated and created by comic master Ken Reed, also creator of the Zenith Mountains. It appeared sporadically through the magazine's history, but not really after about 1970.
That's strange. Jonah is a skinny, gormless,
this is
chinless
Wikipedia,
wonder
so if you just read this word for word, this is literally Wikipedia.
Okay. Then in that case, my opinion of Jonah is that he looks a lot different to what I thought he was going to look like.
Really?
I thought he was going to be very big and sort of, like the Lurch sort of character.
Okay.
Or like the Lenny, maybe, from of Mice and Carl.
Oh, but he's more like Lenny from The Simpsons, to be honest. Don't tell everyone how I ship.
Exactly.
He's a skinny, gormless. Wikipedia describe him as a skinny and gormless, chinless one. Feared by other mariners because of his cleanliness. So basically, the story is that he's a cartoon character from the Beano, fairly obscure, but one of my favorites for many years. Not super obscure for people of a certain age, women of a certain age. And he sinks all the ships that he's on, and once started a war between the nations of Gorgonzola and Paraphernalia, which I like.
Yes,
possibly
both fleets.
Exactly, possibly a satire on the Cold War.
Possibly indeed.
But what about the origin of his name, Zaz?
What about that?
Is it confirmed? Is it confirmed?
No, it is unconfirmed, but it is believed by Wikipedia that it could be based on the biblical prophet Jonah, whose ship nearly sank in a storm, but was eaten by a whale.
Different Jonah. Unrelated. An unrelated whale. No, it's the same Jonah. But Jonah basically ran only really for a few years in the late 50s up until the early 1960s. He was around, but then he appeared in annuals and especially the Beano comic libraries that I love. So we'll talk about those later because he's in like 17 of those. And basically he appeared on and off spin-offs. His sister, I've never seen the spin-off, which is Jinxed, also drawn by Ken Reed based on his sister, and Son of Jonah, which appeared in the year 2606. And the last I saw him
300 years.
Exactly. In the 2019 Beano annual, I actually came across him, and that's what reignited my love of Jonah. So wait a second.
No.
This was in the annual where he was revealed to be the great uncle of Plug from the Bash Street Kids. And so what I did is I printed out the same page about 20 times and I turned it into a book that just has the same page of the Beano annual with Jonah in it over and over again.
Excellent.
Very cool. I'll take a picture of it and you can put it on the screen right now so people can enjoy my book.
That is we should have looked at that, but that would have been probably not the best idea if it's the same page repeated.
No, but the page itself is great. Maybe we will look at it. Who knows?
I like that his sister's called Jinx, like another superstition name, but also keeping with the letter theme. Jonah and
exactly.
Jinx. Sounds
Jonah and
good.
Jinx.
And son of Jonah, Joju.
So apparently in 1993, long after the death of Ken Reed, rest in peace,
Spoilers.
they brought him back in 1993, where I don't know if it was a one-off, but he met Captain Timmy Thickfog and can shapeshift into a monster humanoid with the help of a water gypsy's magic earring. I don't from the Wikipedia sentence, I can't tell if Captain Timmy Thickfog is the shape changer or whether Jonah took a late era superpower upgrade.
It seems like it's saying that Jonah got the upgrade, but again, this is could have been written by anybody. This could be written by Jinx.
But indeed, so
Plug's uncle.
There's not a huge amount out there. Yeah, he's Plug's uncle from the Backstreet Kids.
Plunkle.
And so we'll choose 4 or 5 random pages from Jonah through history, and then we'll go through those, and then we'll see if you can remember which ones they are when you have to put them on the screen. So
yes,
give me a number between 1 and 20.
We'll go for 1. I like 1. But also,
is the next one going to be 2 by any chance?
No. There is sort of, and I imagine it makes sense that for what it was, but it's sort of diminishing returns on the storytelling, isn't it?
I don't know if that's true. You can sink a ship in many different ways.
That is true, as we find out. I will say that I do like the through line, though. I didn't know that there was going to be any continuation, but I like there's a through line with yeast that happens early on.
Does yeast appear several times?
Yeah, in 1 and 2, unless it's all just 1. I thought it was 2 separate ones that had been released like a month apart. Maybe the next one after the green one.
I'm not. No, I got a feeling that the first 2 pages are the 2 pages from the same strip.
I see. In that case, I prefer it less, but I thought it would be funny if that was like the week after or the month after or whatever.
Well, you never know. Ken Reed was a cheeky chap, but I don't think so. So we start off with Jonah, and the heading is, he's got a box of yeast and he's kind of like swimming in the ocean because, spoiler, the ship's already sunk. This has got to be one of the earlier ones. Jonah doesn't look the way he came to look. He's a little less well defined. He's still very, very geeky Stephen Merchant, but he hasn't really developed into the full-faced Jonah, and says, "This is Jonah, the goon of the 7 seas, who has sunk 1/3 of the world's shipping. No sane sea captain will have him on board." He agrees, that's right. He says, "Is it any wonder?" However, at the moment, there being no crazy sea captains in port, Jonah is pining away in a bakery. So somehow he's got himself a bakery job, and he's singing sea shanties. But the very big, muscly comic book chef is not happy, and he says, "What do you call these, laddie?" Now, I think they're Jonah's turds on a tray, but Jonah insists that they are loaves of bread, the stuff they make toast out of for Welsh rarebit, somewhat cryptically explained. Have you frozen, or are you struggling to respond to such a beautiful opening? I think they're turds on a tray.
I disagree. I didn't take that from this. I thought he just made really bad bread. I'd say the one the actual baker's holding isn't much less turdy.
It's like a big boob, isn't it? The baker grabs him and says, "Look," says the baker, who seems to be happily smelling Jonah's turdy bread. But then he grabs out a big fluffy bowl and he says, "Look, son, this is a loaf, a light, feathery, golden, round thing like a floating dream, not a black, heavy, flat thing like a cremated nightmare."
Nice. Savage, scathing.
Savage and scathing for the late 50s. That's what we're talking about here. When you came in,
Paul Hollywood.
Very Paul Hollywood. You seen that clip of where Paul Hollywood shakes David Swimmer's hand and David Swimmer cries?
Yes.
It's the highlights his friends star.
He really did not expect life to be this way.
It's like he's always been stuck in second gear until this very moment. When you came and asked me for a job, son, I thought, this lad doesn't look like Compus Mentis. But I was wrong, son. You're not slightly lacking in brain power, says the rude chef as he taps his own head. He screams.
Smiling.
These are great drawings by Ken Reed, but he screams in Jonah's face, "You're completely lacking in it." And then not only does he literally kick him out, breaking contract, he also commits grievous bodily harm on him.
Instead of just, giving him the tip that he needs, which he's about to do.
Oh, it was the old days, wasn't it? It was a tough life back then. If he hadn't literally screamed at him, kicked him out onto the street and thrown yeast into his face, he would never have learned.
He wouldn't. Splat.
And that's how you get better. So next time you try to bake some bread, put some yeast in it, the stuff that makes everything rise. Yeast. And all that Jonah can do as he sits in the street without a job and without any money, but covered in yeast, shouts, "You rotter." And he heads down to the docks. Half an hour later at the docks, "Mateys," I always wondered what Jonah's accent would be, because comics is set in Scotland, but he
I
always
just thought that to me. The rotter thing, I just imagine, is where you got that from.
I don't think so. This is from like 50 years before I was born.
Yes, exactly. And that doesn't make sense, but okay. It can. I thought it was like a Cockney for some reason. What shock?
You effing rotter. What if he was a Brummie? You rot. Oh, you rotter. It's not a Brummie talk. I have him more as kind of like a farmer, like a Dorset kind of,
Oh yeah, like
sort of a
rotter,
Norfolk chance.
rotter, rotter.
Rodney, you palunka. Mateys, let me come aboard. I'll do anything at all free. And a man comes out of a cafe. I'll even what an opportunity, shouts Jonah, as a man brings a bird in a cage. Jonah, the devil that he is, you know the old folk saying, opportunity only knocks once, as he takes the giant bird out of its cage and leaves it unsupervised next to the cage, and then gets into the cage, tricking the man into putting him on board. And he says, either Paul is putting on weight or I'm getting weak. So that's the setup. Like Jonah needed to sneak on board of a ship.
Well, he didn't need to.
He did, because no woman in their right mind would employ him. He sinks all the ships he's on.
Well, exactly, but again, he needs food and water. Well, he doesn't actually. He's a cartoon. We don't know what he needs. Maybe you're right. I knew
you'd get there eventually.
I have learned so far. It's the opposite of Jeffries.
He's not a speaking kettle.
He is not a speaking kettle, but we know everything about him already.
There's very little to know about Jonah other than he's a cartoon character that sinks ships, and he's a goofy rotter.
It is sort of, I like that sort of, he's a clever brainstorming afternoon character. Like I can imagine Ken Reed and who I refer to as the Reedettes sitting around and thinking like, okay, well, what if we have a sailor who can't sink ships, and then add in like, but it's his dream. It's the only thing he wants to do is be on the sea, and it's
well, he can sink ships, so that's all he does, to be honest.
Exactly. So, tragic hero.
Tragic hero. Give me another number between 1 and 20.
12. Ooh. Oh, while you're there, just go back up a bit. Yeah, he blows up a ship using yeast.
Well, this is
an interesting callback, but it might just be the same issue.
The next page is a different one. It doesn't involve yeast. That has him encountering some really ugly fish. But then I think
it's the one after that.
This one, same one. No, this is the next page here where they find out he's inside, and then everybody realizes that it's Jonah, and then he sinks the ship using yeast. Shall we just talk through this one because it's a good one?
Yeah, sure. So I thought this was a different issue, which,
no, it's simply page 2, because the giveaway this is not a different issue is that the beginning of the panel is clearly the middle of a story. Otherwise the story starts with Jonah just inside a parrot's cage on a table, which is a bold move. I would applaud that move, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense for a children's comic.
Depends if they're doing it episodic.
Later at sea. Yes, sorry. I reckon I better take a look at you, Polly. The man takes the cover off. Gurgle, no, blimey, what am I gonna do? Able Seaman Jonah reporting for duty, Captain, says Jonah inside his cage. Get the women in the boats. Oh, 1950s. These days, you can't say that these days. Everybody don life jackets, prepare to abandon ship. It's him. All available hands stand by the pump, send up an SOS, get the rocket flares on deck. It's no use, folks. The ship is doomed as Davy Jones's locker.
Before you move on, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
One, who is narrating?
Oh, it's the omnipotent editor of Comic Book Land.
Oh, yes. Oh, wait. And my second question isn't a question, it's a statement. I like that everybody knows Jonah. Like, seemingly throughout the world, no matter where he is, as soon as people realise he's Jonah, they start to panic. Like, they've also read his, but even, there's one where he's in the cinema that I read, later on, and it clears out, and he gets the whole cinema to himself because everybody flees because Jonah's here.
Because he sank the cinema.
Yeah, why'd all these cinema? It makes sense that ship people would know.
Seamen.
Yes, but it doesn't make sense that non-seamen would know.
No.
Also, why would there be any women on this boat in the first place if it's the 50s and they're clearly all just like white men in the 60s?
Moving on. Next morning, watch him, Alf, watch him, Alf, like a perishing hawk. Don't take your eyes off him for a second, or we're sunk. So it seems they believe that as long as they watch Jonah, the ship won't sink. But they're fools, aren't they? Because it doesn't matter. It's a done deal. So Jonah's singing and he's spraying the deck. And then he turns around and he's singing, "A life on the ocean waves. Hello, a rat." Squeak. Horrible creatures. Rats are a common kind of what's it called? Like inciting incident in comic books, right? It's like a rat will appear, and then that'll push the story forward. Yes. So Jonah starts to try to spray the rat with a water spray, and at that point, while Jonah is running around spraying rats with a hose pipe, that's when the captain decides that it's a good idea for him to relax and take a break. One would argue that is the time when you definitely should not, because Jonah is now running after a rat with a hose pipe. Oh, it's gone down the hatch. He then sprays lots and lots of water into the hold, as they call it, for 15 full minutes. He sprays this water while the other guy, the captain or whoever he's supposed to be, Alf, is having a good old smoke on his 1950s pipe.
He's not even. He's had a 15-minute break, and in that break, he hasn't even turned around.
Oh, why would I? Nothing dangerous could happen behind me.
It's just to see everywhere I look. I might as well just look this way.
Exactly. So Jonah has now been spraying water onto the yeast for 15 full minutes, and the yeast has swollen and got bigger and bigger, as it wouldn't do unless it was in an oven. I mean, maybe it's a hot day, but anyway, so the yeast is.
I did think that.
That's not how like if he just sprayed in like yeast, I'm pretty sure the yeast would have just turned into like liquid. But
yeah,
hey,
if that was the case, you wouldn't be transferring it over water. If that was how it worked.
What do you say in the English? I hope someone got fired for this.
Oh yes, blunder.
Help, the perishing car goes after me. Blimey and perishing are classic words, comic book words.
Perishing as in is that just like a
Effing.
Bleeding out? Yeah, not as in it's actually got a time limit on its existence.
No, it's not a descriptive term.
I see. That's
one hour later, the entire ship. Oh, perishing's common. Like if you read these comics, those are bleeding, perishing, rotter. Well, we've had all the good ones so far, but I'm sure there'll be more. This when you read the 2019 one to see if any of those have survived, but no, they haven't. It's all modern.
Jonah on
TikTok Jonah. He's dancing backwards and playing the guitar with both hands.
Exactly.
As the ship goes down. 1 hour later, everybody's in the sea. Glug, glug, glug. We're sinking. Glug, glug, glug. What a strange thing to say. And finally, the inevitable. The entire ship goes down. Every man, woman, and child killed, except for Jonah, who escapes using the door from Titanic. And he gets all the way back. And the first thing he does is he goes to rub it into the face of the baker who'd already given him a good hiding at the beginning of this episode.
Which is reasonable. I would do the same as Jonah here if I had
with so much blood on his hands. And surely in the early days before he'd become desensitized.
Maybe not. He's just obnoxious to death.
Well, would you believe it? Wait till I get ashore, he says, not even going back for any of the people.
As they glug to death.
As they glug, glug, glug to death. He goes to knock on the door and he says, and the angry baker comes out and says, "Very clever, ain't you?" says Jonah, Mr. Know-it-all. You told me that yeast makes everything rise, didn't you? For your information, I've just sent a boatload of humans to their death. Well, for your information, Mr. Cleverpants, I've just been on a ship full of yeast that got wet, and instead of making the ship rise, like you said, it made it blooming well sink. Now apologize, he demands. As the baker, whose 6 brothers were all on board that ship, puts his hand on his head and says, "Oh," he actually says "dough."
He does say dough.
He does say dough. Dough. Because the dough is from an actual... Who was it who did the dough?
A man.
No, it's some famous one like William H. Macy.
Someone like that, but the Honeymooners,
Jack Lemmons,
Tonks, Laurel Hardy, Jimmy
Finlayson. He's the one with the goofy eyes.
You can't say that anymore. They are.
His eyes are all scamming and pemming and scamming.
One in Pem, one nowhere.
Anyway, that's the end of the first Jonah. That's way back from 1960 Beano annual. So when we were both young whippersnappers. Give me another
Exactly.
number between
Let
1 and
me
20.
just, yes, my thoughts on that beforehand.
If you must.
If I must, I like that he still doesn't at the end blame himself. He says the ship sank, like the yeast got wet
In
and the ship sank.
the ship sank. Mistakes were made.
And I like that the baker at the end looks like complicit. Like you are right about the
Oh,
line. Like there's a lot of it's very Simpsons actually. There's way more detail, but you can make little changes. And that last baker where he's realised he's complicit in the sinking of a ship is good. Like that's the dough of someone who has to turn someone into the police.
himself. I'm turning myself and you in, Jonah. We're going to do life for this. Sorry, Baker. It's not me. I don't actually think you're responsible for this. Simply telling Jonah that yeast rises is not enough for me to hold you responsible for manslaughter of 70 souls.
No, but I do think he'll be thinking, I have to tell someone now so that if it comes out in 10 years, I can't get in trouble then.
I need to tie this man up and put him in my basement until I can reach the authorities.
Exactly.
But I wonder what one of his fingers would taste like in a pie.
Yes, just one.
Give me a number between 1 and 20.
8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like we're in the middle of the cinema one here, actually. So this is taken from the Beano book, at the annual back in 1872. So it's hard to say whether they're actually saying that. No. He's watching a movie that was set in 1872, but it's actually from probably 1961 it's from, so a mere year later.
Yes.
Jonah is in the cinema and he's watching the captain of the Murray Select. Now this is upon Murray Celeste, which was the ship that sunk and was mysterious for many years. They thought like a ghost ship or something. He has a stowaway on board.
Kids.
What's that?
A favourite for kids.
Very Celestia. Cool. I've been chewing nuts ever since I nipped in here at Jamaica. So Jonah's been down in the hull, down under the boards with the peasants, and he's been in the nut box nibbling on nuts since he somehow jumped onto the ship in Jamaica. But the ship has survived. All hands wishing to see our film show report to the ship cinema. That's why, because it's the cinema on a ship.
That does make sense. Yeah. No, that's why they all know him.
So he's been stowing away, but it seems like if he stows away, the ship doesn't. So I mean, that's good. So if you wanted Jonah on board, you just have to make sure he pretends to stow away.
He's like that cat, isn't he? Unless you see him, like nothing bad seems to happen until people are aware that he's there.
Exactly. I'll sneak in when the lights go out, says Jonah. No one will notice who I am in the dark. And 5 minutes later, while the lights are very clearly still on, he's stood in there. And this is a very strange cinema in which everybody literally just stands very, very close to the screen. They're showing a true life at sea mystery. A gripping sea drama commences at the year 1872, etc., etc. And then we cut away to the movie itself, which is actually a very well drawn, like, in the Beano comics, they always had a couple of pages of like serious comics that were super boring. And I always skipped over those, but they were always drawn in this style. I like the drawings. It's the stories are always really dull. Except for the Leopard of Lime Street.
Exactly. I'm into the whole film within a film thing. Film within a comic.
Film within a comic, isn't it? It's like that Watchmen. Basically, I reckon that's where Alan Moore stole that bit from.
Exactly.
And after a brief infection, blah blah blah. So they're showing us the bits of the film. Now, if you know anything about stories, especially comics, that means that whatever happens in the film is going to happen more comedically in the rest of this comic. But anyway,
spoilers.
Something's happening, and they find the Murray Celeste, and there's no crew, and all they find is a letter and half-eaten sandwiches, and the captain inside the movie says there must be an evil presence on board, something so diabolical the crew may have fled from it in sheer terror. Cut back to the movie theater in which two funny smoking chaps say they're unimpressed. What a load of rot. Tain't half as convincing. It doesn't mean like that bit in between your bottom in your movie. That's not
Like,
what he's
what a load
referring
of
to.
rot. What a load of
What
rot.
a load of rot, Alf. It ain't Alf as convincing as that mystery we saw last week, Alf. So he's a Cockney, isn't he?
This
Which
is
one was
Alf
that?
not dead then? Or is this a
Alf?
different Alf?
Like
Alf
Alf
who
from the
died on...
80s?
Well, he died in the Yeast explosion.
I don't think that was Alf. Is it?
I think he name-checked him as Alf, didn't he?
They're all called Alf, but no, I think his name was Jonks.
I think he's called Jonah.
His name was
Alf.
Alf. It's Alf's son, Alf Jr.
Tonks.
Tonks Jr. Anyway, Alf continues. You know, the one where the teenage Yeti met up with a schoolgirl werewolf in that haunted milk bar, that was dead realistic. And Jonah, not able to contain his rage at this man talking and not wanting to keep his cool, he shouts, "Look, mate, if you don't stop nattering so I can hear the soundtrack, I'll move over there," which isn't really much of a threat, is it? "Okay, mate, don't mind. You move, I don't mind." "Right, I will," says Jonah. "Nobody's going to push me around." "Cool, Alf. Did you see that on the screen? Either they're showing a repeat of that teenage Yeti or it was him. Him. Obviously, now we know that refers to Jonah, a bit like Voldemort, where you can't say his name. Him what caught me name.
Exactly.
It was him, Bert. I'd know him anywhere. The rest of the audience are the same opinion. "It's Jonah in the cinema. I must have sneaked aboard. Doomed. Finished. Done for." Here's the thing, though. If they all die on every ship, who's passing on this information?
It's probably the papers.
How would they know?
That's true. Well, Jonah's coming back and telling people openly. He came back and told them, like, the first thing he did when he got off that door was tell that baker that the ship he'd just been on had sunk.
With all of his family on board, yeah.
They should bring in the detective from Hell in a...
Michael McConaughey.
Yes, what's he called? Alan Bennett.
Bennett McConaughey.
Exactly.
So Jonah now gets to see the movie undisturbed till the end. Well, that's that. And we think that's the end. But when he goes out, well, the rotten, unpatriotic lot, they've nipped off early to avoid standing for the national anthem. I imagine that's what they used to do in the old days when the movie finished, to respect the Queen. Jonah stalks from the cinema, but out on deck. It's funny, there's no sign of them here. Either they're all below. See, can you remember what happened in the movie, right? All the crew disappeared, right?
And if you look at there's a gripping clue in that third panel where the life ring says Mary Select on it, which was the name of the ghost ship in the movie.
They kind of spoil that at the beginning by literally saying it in the fourth, like the fifth and sixth words of the story.
I thought that ship was the movie ship. This is more convoluted than the Philip Jeffries stuff. This is like when Cindy went missing for 3 years.
I'm not sure if I agree with you because he goes into the cinema and then this movie starts.
Yeah, so go down a bit. It then says now in 1960, but then continues to show the movie.
I know, but that's what they used to do in the top. You got to read each one. There was a ship without a crew afloat in 1872. Now in 1962, sailors vanish without a clue. They used to do that. It was a Beano thing. They'd write a little rhyme at the top. I don't know if it was just annuals. But anyway, Jonah goes around and he finds the captain's bathtub filled with hot water and the captain's togs. And he must have jumped straight through the porthole without opening it. In the recreation room, an unfinished letter. Mary Select, 28th of November 1960. "Dear Mum, the ship is the worst I've ever been on. The grub is rotten. The captain is an old irk." And this dude he'd splintered his, not a euphemism, he'd splintered his fountain pen and he'd gone. Jonah wanders around and record play going click, click, click as if everyone suddenly fled. Some very strange sausage that still has a man's dentures in, maybe more than one pair. Multiple pairs of dentures. Multiple pairs of dentures. Denture sausage. Cool. He's dropped that fried banger so quick that he's left his false gnashes in it. There's only one explanation to this lot. There's some evil presence on board the tub. Something so diabolical and ghastly that the crew have all scarpered in terror, and I reckon it's time I hop to. So he doesn't sink this one.
No, but maybe it carries on in a minute. I don't remember. But
no, that's the end.
So where did they go?
It's unclear, but they're not on that ship anymore. So they all just jumped into the icy ocean the middle of the icy Atlantic Ocean. I can only imagine that it's another 75 bodies sinking slowly to the bottom.
And did they do that because they saw Jonah in the cinema? Because you can't really blame him at this point. Like, even on the last one, like, it was still his fault, but that guy said, I'll keep an eye on him, and then turned around for 15 minutes.
I'd
So
say
there's
at
got to be
this
some blame placed in other places.
Exactly. So far, Jonah didn't even sink the second ship, and the first one, he simply with some competent leadership, easily could have been fixed. If only Alfred turned around and just turned the tap off so that there was no more water going out at some point. But that's not to say that Jonah is without some blame, but maybe it's a disease.
Maybe. I think
maybe he has a bad luck disease.
I think they're going a bit overboard with it, ironically.
And then here's the twist. And so as history starts to repeat itself, the evil presence does a rapid bunk across the watery waste. Of course, it did the thing where it repeated itself. The film then became the comic. And Jonah is the evil presence, isn't he?
It seems that way, doesn't it? It seems that that's what they're pushing for.
Exactly. Give me another number between 1 and 20. We'll do two more.
17.
17.
I'll say now that my favourite thing about Jonah's design is that he sort of looks like he constantly needs a shit.
He's actually constantly doing one.
Maybe. He just looks just stressed. It's sort of, I feel bad for him in a way. Like, he always looks just sort of, like he needs the bathroom stressed all the time.
Indeed. So the thing about a lot of these is from the Beano annuals, so they're all like multiple pages, like 3 and 4 page stories, but that's fine. That's good. That's the kind of thing we like down here in Beano land. So here's one that's actually from the regular Beano, so it's a single page. Let's have a look at this one.
Nice. This looks old.
Well, it is almost the same as the other one. So that one was the 19. We've looked at 1960 and 61. This is another one from December 61. Again, some great design. Ken Reed's beautiful, beautiful drawings. So we see Jonah. It's got he's chowing down on a horseshoe, but it ain't going to help him. A flotilla of British warships steams across the Atlantic. In command is Commodore Horatio Flute Blower. These are all kind of nautical kind of things that to the generation in 1960 who was drawing this, these were normal things to know of Horatio Hornblower and the Mary Celeste. But to us, it's just baffling. To us, if it's not on TikTok or Instabook, it's baffling to us.
Yes, I don't understand these words.
If Olivia Rodriguez isn't singing it while tightroping, I'm not interested.
Loom bands
and homemade vape.
Fine.
Rule Britannia, Britannia rules, the warships are singing. And here, I really love this character design here, which is Horatio Flute Blower. Here he is. We're on a Jonah hunt. So in this one, we haven't actually seen a standard Jonah sinks the ship. They're now hunting Jonah. If I can deliver the bounder to Portsmouth, they're going to promote me. I'll be an admiral by Christmas, you see. I have a plan that can't fail.
Seems like a job for the police.
If he's a serial murderer, but I think it's hard to say whether Jonah is actually can be held responsible for these things.
He's at least a serial manslaughterer.
He sank a single ship and the rest, and now the world's after him. Now, starring Michael McConaughey, Jonah, season 6.
You can say it like a single ship, but that negates the 70 lives on board.
70 souls. You call them souls when they're sailors.
Oh, yes.
So Horatio Fart Blower, Fart Knocker continues. You'll note with this Charles Fartop. You'll note this map with marker pins stuck on it. Well, every time we pick up a Jonah warning, we'll mark the position with a pin. In this way, we're steadily tracking him down. Meanwhile, on a cargo boat carrying a load of magnets, Jonah is now clambering over the side of this boat.
From the sea.
From the sea, probably from like a Titanic door that he's resting on from the previous ship that he sank.
The corpses of the other souls bound together by yeast.
That's right. The corpses of multiple Daniel Radcliffes.
Yes, young souls.
No mates, no eek, he claims, as a grown man captain takes a metal magnet and throws it full whack against Jonah's face, and suggests that all of his crew do the same. Let's have it, boys. Pelt the fiend with magnets. Pelt the fiend with magnets.
Cargo as well.
That's the name of my autobiography.
Yes. It's, nobody, this is where I feel bad for Jonah, because Jonah seems to be living in a world where everybody's incompetent, but they think Jonah's incompetent.
There's incompetence and there's incompetence. So Jonah's
Well, which would you say is less incompetent here? Climbing aboard a ship from just floating around on the sea, or throwing the cargo at something into the ocean? I'd say they're probably around the same level of incompetence.
But we know what's going to happen if they let Jonah on board. He's going to sink the bleeding, rotting ship, isn't he? So they throw a magnet and it grips around Jonah's neck and it knocks him back into the sea and they shout, "Phew, he's gone." Another Jonah warning, sir. A ship 10 miles to the east. Fartknocker is putting the thing into the map. We'll have the boundary in irons before nightfall. I'll mark the position. The Commodore's flagship races to the spot and they grab him. They get Jonah and they pull him onto their ship, which has to be a bad idea.
Yeah, not as bad as an idea as the next drawing.
Look as he throws up a Hitler salute. Look, the fiend in the ship's safe. Lock the fiend in the ship's safe and lock the safe in a cell, thus rendering him without oxygen. Who, me? Yes, you. They take Jonah away, but as Jonah is marched towards the end of the magnets, he turns towards the magnet pins and what happens is, this is brilliant. And this is some of the great Jonah stuff, is like very convoluted ways in which the ship sinks. And so he turns and the magnet on his neck pulls the pins out of the map. And they push Jonah away. And, "Oh, what's going on?" says the man who seems to be steering the ship from inside the control room of the ship, which doesn't, I'm not sure how he's seeing where they're going, but maybe he doesn't need to. About 10 of these, about 10 of these plaster into this man's arse and he spins the wheel around. The wheel, that's the correct term. Naturally, the helmsman in his painful plight tends to forget his duty. Ouch, I've been stung a dozen times. It's hard to say exactly what happens, but I think he turns the ship into another ship, and one abandoned ship later. Grown, I'll be an able seaman before Christmas. Now that means that he's going to get demoted. And he's sailing away on a Titanic door. Not a great captain who's letting the rest.
Don't know how Jonah escaped.
It's not important. We just know he did.
Yes.
So then Commodore Fartknocker's prophecy comes true and on Christmas Day in the seaman's mission. And look at this guy. Look how haggard he's become since simply interacting with Jonah. That's a great drawing.
Very stamped.
Very stamped. Let's look how he was at the beginning. Brilliant, like proper, like hawk. And now he's all knackered up because of Jonah. Merry Christmas, mate.
It says AB flute blower.
ABC flute blower. AC Fartknocker. Merry Christmas, mate. Ain't I seen you somewhere before? It turns out to be Jonah. And so to get away from Jonah, Captain AC Slater literally climbs up the chimney. Eek, eek, get me away from the sea goon. I want to go home. Mother, help. Coo, he must think he's Santa Claus.
Next week, mirth with a mark.
Right.
I feel irritation towards everybody who isn't Jonah in these comics. And it's also quite lofty in that Jonah arrives, but then it's always their response to Jonah that seems to crash the ship. It's not like if they just left Jonah, it's the whatever happened thing, isn't it? It's like Jonah's on board now and it means that you're going to sink your own ship. It doesn't mean that Jonah's going to do it. It means that if you've just reacted calmly to him being there, your ship wouldn't sink.
It's hard to say that, isn't it? Because Alf did react calmly and Jonah was spraying mountains of water into the east.
That's true. So does it matter? That's what I mean. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't respond to Jonah, he'll sink your ship. If you do respond to him, you will end up sinking it because of his arrival.
So there's so many good stuff that we could look, but essentially, let's talk through the ones that we've got before we go into the art, and let's talk about how he sunk each ship. Let's see if I can find that one. So we haven't got all of them. Obviously, he was in hundreds of these, but we talked about the one where he knocks over he forces and he eats some worms.
We've got yeet.
Shocks an old man into falling backwards, which knocks a tank through the deck and opens up a hole in the side of the ship.
Which was also an aquarium which frees all of his fish back into the sea.
Exactly. The next one is it's kind of hard to see exactly how he sinks it, but he basically crashes it into an iceberg because they're trying to avoid some kind of pigeon thing. And then
it looks like they see him there and immediately get on the lifeboats, and he seems to sink though.
Of course. And then when they're sinking, they actually see Jonah and they realize that Jonah is essentially immortal and they should all jump on him if they want to survive. And so the last horrific panel is them all grasping on Jonah as he's shouting "Glow," and they're all trying to get on Jonah while they're surrounded by sharks. And that's a proper like Zack Snyder ending.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this entire panel is the shark knows who he is. The shark says it's him.
Even the shark knows it's him.
He can't damage the shark. The shark can live in water, and the shark still fears Jonah.
I know it's hard to say, but maybe there's not a lot of logic to that.
I wonder what would happen if Jonah met with other Beano characters. Would they also have this fear, or is it just this Jonah universe?
Well, here,
look at this. Worlds?
By 2019, that is proven because they go through a time warp back to the 1960s, the Bash Street Kids, and they meet Jonah and they realize this is Jonah's first voyage. And the Bash Street Kids know because Plug's his great nephew or something, they know that it's going to sink. So they know, so he's well known. These days in the Beano, they used to be like they'd occasionally like crossover, but now I think there's a lot more crossover shared universe stuff because it's the 1920s.
I see. The Beano cinematic universe.
Exactly. This one involves Jonah and a pig, in which he lets a pig out, and then he tries to lasso the pig, and then they crash into another ship. So let's have a look at the Jonah artwork, and then have a bit of a look of the Beano comic library covers, and then we'll dip back into your favorite Beano comic library.
Yes, this seems to be I mean is our longest running character as well.
Well, yes and no, because basically when we were about 1963 or 4, he didn't really appear. He was just a very sporadic. So yes, I'll give you that. But his big run was only for about 5 or 6 years in the early 60s.
I see. Maybe they realised they'd run out of ways to sink ships, which is not true.
Not true at all, is it? They just need to get a bit clever. So you can tell it's quite an early one because Jonah hasn't developed into the late period Jonah, but once again, Jonah is being attacked by people. It's like the Incredible Hulk, isn't he?
He is.
He's waving a white flag that says Jonah, it's me, and then it says naval guided missiles. So people are literally firing missiles and shooting giant bullets at him, bullets that are the size of his head.
Yeah, and he's sort of like the opposite of some of our other characters. He's not the opposite. He avoids death in a very similar way to like Creed and Harmony.
Many comic book characters avoid death in elaborate ways, and Jonah's no exception.
He certainly isn't.
It's like a face forward almost. But then we get a real classic, like a proper painted Jonah, and it is beautiful.
That's good. It's nice to see what the colour scheme would be. Because I just assumed red because they seem to just use red ink in the ones we've seen. I suppose they change it up though, don't they? There was like a green one and a blue.
He has used a bunch of stuff. So I got this postcard that I'm not sure where I got from, but it's like a 2015 like classic Beano characters, and that's a painted one. I'm not sure if this is an original Ken Reed one that is, it says David Parkins, so this is an updated. It's not brilliant. Whereas this Beano book one where Jonah is literally happily dancing as a ship goes down, and he's dancing on top of the mast that the helpless souls are saying SOS, and he's just like a big goofy idiot. He's like dancing on top of thing because he knows he's immortal. He's just going to get rescued. He lives without fear of death.
If he is immortal, it implies that not only is he named after the biblical Jonah, that he might just be. That's a story they should have done, but probably weren't allowed to.
I'm almost certain he got eaten by a whale, at least one.
But the biblically accurate whale, and then he causes. They should have just put him on the ark.
Maybe on the back cover of that same Beano annual, so that he was a cover star in '61, I think. And it's brilliant. Now he's pretty much naked. He's taken his costume off. He's impaled a sea turtle with an oar.
Oh
Such is
yeah.
his disregard for human life and animal life. And I think he's playing a harmonica, but it looks more like a laser disc. And
It looks like he's biting into records.
it does. Brilliant again. Absolutely fantastic painted piece. Now, back in those days, they didn't credit artists in most cases. So Ken Reid was painting these, and like nobody would have known. I certainly didn't know when I was a kid the name of most of the artists, or pretty much any of them. I read the comics of Terry Bave and was a huge one. And I think later by the 90s, they were signing, maybe even earlier than that. This is what Ken Reid was famous for. Ken Reid was famous. He had a character called Face Ache, and this kind of really contorted kind of face is what Ken Reid was really well known.
Yeah, I can see the eyes and the nose are very reminiscent of those mountains.
Yes, beautiful.
Do you have any modern Jonahs?
I do actually. So strangely enough, they rebooted him.
There was one with a whale, by the way.
What happened with the whale?
There was you scroll past a picture of him with a whale, like a cover.
Oh, like a Beano cover.
Yeah, like a cover from the Beano.
Jonah's having a whale of a time. That's an extended story bit. But
I bet
here
they saved that for issue 100, probably.
Probably. Jonah eats a whale. I couldn't eat a whole whale, but I could sink one.
Eat some of it.
And then impale it with an oar while I chew on some records. So strangely enough, it seems like there was a short-lived reboot in the maybe early 2000s in which Jonah was redesigned by a child with an iPad by the looks of it. It's so bad that I can't even find it in this document, even though I know it exists. Here we go. So in 2013, there was a reboot.
An official one, or just somebody drew this and put
official.
it on the internet?
This is an official Beano, I think, like just like I don't know whether it ran just as a one-off or whatever. It's very poor indeed.
It is.
It's more just I'm Jonah. I work on a ship. Now, someone sensed the name Jonah brings bad luck. I said that's just a silly seafaring superstition. Then he said, "Yeah, but I'm the captain." And obviously Jonah's been kicked off the ship because the captain gets. I mean, that's an awful joke. This is why 2013 sucks a mere decade ago.
Terrible. This wasn't even worth publishing. They didn't even sink the ship. I thought initially I thought the ship was sinking in the background, but it's just leaving.
It's just leaving.
There's also just a picture of water.
Everything's bad, isn't it? But here, let's go off into some Jonah art. So here is a collector plate from the official Beano plate collection that you can buy if you want. Now, I wasn't sure whether it was just a regular plate with some paper stuck on it. It's not bad. It's not classic Ken Reid drawing, but here is what I particularly like. Can you read that?
Heat condition, pre-owned from a smoking home with some nicotine staining on the back as pictured.
So that's brilliant. So you can get it for $5 and you can see here the nicotine staining.
Oh yeah, as aforementioned.
This is a drawing of Jonah, but it's actually very like a badly rendered version of a good Ken Reid picture. But there was
just on the nose, isn't it?
Here's what you need to see. At some point, there was an actual Jonah statue, like a statuette, released. At some point,
I think
not too many years ago.
Oh yeah,
there was a Jonah statue made.
Wearing Rolex.
So it's not bad at all, right? You can buy like a proper, 10-inch or something Jonah statue, and it's enjoyable and it's well rendered and it's not bad at all. So that's not bad.
This is just me personally, but I don't like figures when they have a base.
No, bases that I don't really like. You can't move them around easy. But what if they're nicotine stained?
It's even better. It comes in original. It's still. How is it still in its polystyrene packaging then?
Is that
also stained?
Everything's stained.
Caution: polystyrene may also be stained.
So this brings us on to there were, I think, 17 Beano comic libraries, of which you have 3.
Yes, I sure do. I have Space Oddity, Puss in Boots, and Dive, Dive, Dive.
Dive, Dive, Dive.
Dive, Dive, Dive is in significantly worse condition than the others, but that might just be my own fault.
Have you stained it with nicotine?
Most likely.
Dive, Dive, Dive. Yeah. Not bad. And then, with the 3 birds. Now that's terrible, isn't it? But if you look
Don't
back on
find
the
him
screen,
Rocky.
you look back on the screen, Comic Library 48, Jonah gives you that sinking feeling in which he is Titanic themed.
Oh dear.
Jonah chips that pass in the night in which he is
That's
thrusting.
good.
It's not a bad image. It's not. I don't think any of these are Ken Reed because I think he's already dead. I think he died in the late 80s. So
And it's like chips that pass in the night is good.
it's a good comic story, isn't it? This is a very bad Jonah, the charge of Colonel Grenade.
Yeah, so that's
102.
it's a bongo, Jonah.
Jonah meets Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots and another set of characters from the Beano. Terrible, not funny at all.
No, Tom and Jerry, but Jerry's a dog.
Jerry and Tom are both dogs. Jonah, Space Oddity, David Bowie themed, Jonah themed, alien themed extended comic.
What is a Jeffries?
Jonah, You Only Sink Twice. That's the one I've got. Have you got that one as well?
I do not.
It's good though. I don't understand what's going on in this, but it's a great Jonah image where he's looking both ways, like January.
That is good. That's very good.
Jonah in Dive, Dive, Dive. Actually, a lot of these are quite close together. It's like
maybe someone on the team, or just culturally, he became popular for a hot minute. He's like the Gangnam Style of the 60s.
maybe these are at late 80s, 90s ones at this point though.
Oh yeah.
Jonah in that sinking feeling. Jonah in Bottle Ships. That's the worst Jonah by far. I wonder whether that poor bongo style Jonah continued on the inside.
Yeah, that's garbage.
We'll never know. Jonah and Puss in Boots again, as if the team you hoped would re-happen.
Must have worked.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Jonah in Scuppered. Literally, this ship is prepared for his arrival by painting the word wreck across its hull.
And he's just fishing.
He's just fishing, gone fishing. He's fishing for loose parts and the gold teeth of dead seamen.
Exactly.
Jonah's having a whale of a time. Interested to see how that pans out.
He looks like he's having. That's the only one where he's smiling as well that we've
he's
seen
having
so
fun,
far.
isn't he? He's not having fun at this one. Jonah in the Gruel Sea is about to get Steve Irwin up the jacksie by, and there's a bird ready to drop its load into his mouth, and he seems to be riding a kind of like
bomb,
sea bomb. Jonah in All at Sea. Maybe he's finally become Captain Jonah after many years.
That would be a story that would have to happen at some point.
Gets
surely.
Promoted. Look at all those ships he's sunk in his wake. What possible promotion could come from such wreckage?
There was nobody left to do it.
You're the only admiral left, Jonah. You're our only hope. Please don't sink yourself. This one, the Bash Street Kids, by the looks of it, pre the revelation that he was his uncle, tied him to a tree. Shark. We already know how he's not afraid of sharks. Tied him to a shark-infested desert island tree. It's only a matter of time before he has to eat his own leg.
What's the anchor for? Is that so if he escapes, he can't swim away?
If he escapes, he drowns immediately. Jonah and Boys Will Be Boys. This one, he's definitely in trouble. He's got a red light on his head, and he's in every issue. There's just half a ship sinking.
Yeah, and that one he's in a bomb. That's the best title. I've been waiting for that.
Boys Will Be Buoys.
Boys Will Be Boys. Yes.
In America, they pronounce it as buoys.
Boys.
Boys will be buoys.
Yes.
Look at those little souls waving. No chance, mate. You're sinking to your death. Even if Jonah wanted to save you, he couldn't. He's literally inside a bomb.
At least he looks nervous in that one.
He's nervous in quite a few of them. He's having a hard time. Jonah doesn't get off light.
No, he's not enjoying his time. And he seemed to, well, he didn't do a very good job at the bakery, but if he'd learned, he didn't destroy the bakery.
No, because it's not a ship.
Exactly. So it's likely that he could find a second career.
It's a land-based
yeah, and do a better job. I think look at that Drake face. Oh, yeah, I just sort of put in like the best of that. The craziest one. Go the other way.
So Space Oddity is in jail space, right? So he's flying. We don't know who's flying in a rocket. I still thought it's a bit thoughtless not having anybody meet me.
I'll just preface this by this has got to be like, even on my limited knowledge, like the most extreme Jonah story. Does
he sink a spaceship? Because surely that's the word this is going.
Destroyer of worlds, essentially.
So he's off flying. Jonah somehow has got himself inside a spaceship. And I've got it. This is an aptitude test. This is the ship's bridge simulator. He doesn't realize for a second he's actually in real space. So he starts flying the spaceship wildly. And as if by magic, some aliens see him, craft piloted by strange creature now entering a gravity field. Orders are to destroy it at all costs. What a human motivation.
I did not expect to see these kind of alien designs within this Jonah world, but it makes sense. Like ship, oh yeah, spaceship,
Isn't it?
Send him up there.
Ship biscuit.
Exactly.
And so they try to exterminate him, but this being Jonah, they simply end up like flying into each other and all dying.
This is post Doctor Who as well, isn't it? Or like post Dalek. Like that has
very
to
much
be a
so. The Daleks is like the 70s. This is a film like in like probably late 80s, even the 90s.
So that's got to be.
This is in the lull. This is in the post Sylvester McCoy era.
I see. McGann.
It's the McGann era. So Jonah causes the death of all of these people. They don't even put them like escaping in, you know, like sometimes they'll have a parachute coming out or something. No, these people, they just send my regards to their next of kin, says Jonah, destroyer of worlds.
Yeah, they're not human, so it doesn't matter as much, I imagine.
To be honest, it didn't matter when they were human, did it?
No, it did not.
Captain Nurk, crew to the Starship Enterprise. Not even trying at this point. You've evaded the goon, but you've hit the asteroid belt, you Wallies. See, Wallies.
I'm sorry, you are incorrect. He did try. It is the Starship Exit price, if you look properly.
Very clever indeed. So you can see the difference from words such as core and blimey and rotters. We're now into the 80s, 90s where we use words like Wallies.
Goon.
Or you Wally, or you goon.
Yes, Captain Nurk.
Now, if you read this now, it'd just be littered with 4-letter expletives.
Yeah, you woke.
And TikTok links.
Jonah, you butterfly.
You snowflake butterfly. You've killed us all. You'll be the death of us all, Jonah. And so then he lands in this alien land. Of course he does. And he hopes that he's still passing the test, which is a classic trope in which they believe something's happening and nothing shakes. It's the man living in the jungle still fighting the war 70 years later. Alien comes out, but he's got water in his ears, so he doesn't notice it.
Very Ken Reed.
Very Ken Reed. And so the alien, and obviously this is post Ken Reed, but the alien, he turns around and the alien is screaming because he's never seen anything as horrible as Jonah, which makes no sense. And so Jonah runs out naked out of the pond and little aliens running away shouting, it's him. So even they know.
Different galaxies are aware of him. I have cut some pages out, by the way, and that's why it's making less and less sense.
Now we get some kind of alien with a buzzing noise in his ears and the strange pong of cabbage. Pong is a beautiful kind of Beano word. They had the comics core and so the Beano and the Dandy, right? But Ken Reed, a lot of the work he did was for the Buster kind of the IPC comics, which were a little bit more cool and hit Wizard and Chips, Buster, and in the 70s, Shiver and Shake and Core and Whoopi. And one of the favorite characters was Pongo Snodgrass, which is a great character. And he really stunk. That was his thing. But Pong is a very kind of 70s, 80s comic word.
Yeah, it's very British as well. I have a sort of issue with words that, like adjectives for smell. I find a lot of them displeasing to me for some reason. Like
Pong's
whiffy.
Not that. Whiffy, but Pong's like good, surely.
Yeah, they're all in that sort of boat of like, I like stank, and that's it.
Stankonia. So Jonah's got somehow into this spaceship and he's pressing all the buttons, and now he's traveling faster than light, therefore back in time. He smashes up a TARDIS. I
didn't even notice that.
He somehow kills the dinosaurs.
He doesn't. It's a clever subversion of the story in that the dinosaurs hide from Jonah, and they've been hiding to this day, apparently, inside
a volcano. He goes through the Roman Empire, Halley's Comet, and Nero is in there, the bad guy, and he's getting up to something. And then eventually, as is this case in all comics and stories of this kind, he somehow gets back exactly to where he started. And he says, did I pass the test? And somebody, for no reason at all, shouts, it's him. You unprincipled cad. You didn't get rid of the goon after all. whimper.
It's a good line. I like that if you go back one there, they just put an arrow with instructions. It just says feeble gasp.
Feeble gasp.
Instead of trying to like convey it somehow. They did it in one of the early ones actually. It said magnetic pull, which isn't like not like whoosh, but also the big giant cabbage alien there is like planet sized and he flies through its brain.
Yeah. He clearly is an absolute mutilator, and there's no two ways about it.
He's come back to Earth here having destroyed planets and civilizations, as opposed to just like now 70 men on a boat isn't looking too bad.
No, an entire universe and all the dinosaurs. So what we learned a lot here that Jonah is a funny, cheeky character that has no problem in committing genocide, essentially.
Yes, I wouldn't say it's cheeky.
Sea-based genocide.
He seems to be quite defeatist on himself, but also at the same time, he doesn't realize that he's the problem.
He's unself-aware, and that is a trait that is running through all of the characters that we like. It is humorous when they are not self-aware, whether it is Kirk Van Milhouse Dad, whether it is Database, whether it is Cindy Chandler, or Scott Walker, rest in peace.
Exactly.
Our cousins, etc., etc. Anyway, that's the end of Jonah. That was, as with all of these things, with many of them, we could easily dig in for another 6 or 7 hours. But thanks for all you hundreds of listeners who have stuck with us to the very end. You all get this free Jonah badge. All you have to do is write into us and ask for it, and you'll only bleeding get it.
Print it off. Print it off yourself.
Print it off. Print it off. The end.
Goodbye. Good Jonah.
Goodbye.